Well, I told you I would show you my super complex portfolio, so I will show you my super complex portfolio. I will explain the portfolio, and then I will talk to you about how I was talking about earlier in selling my Dodge and Cox and buying into FuseX, which is another fund I already own. I'm going to explain that philosophy in the hopes of lowering my expense ratio, which will save me management fees over the next year. And really, I'm going to lower my expense ratio, expose myself to more growth. I'm going to eliminate the funds that only hold less than 5% of my positions, funds like AFJDX. You can see there's a few of these funds in my portfolio that are under 5%, which isn't good. You want to get those over 5%, or you're just a little too thin, and while at the same time maintaining my capitalization. As you can see here, I've got my asset allocation out, large cap, mid cap, and small cap. I've determined that by adding up the overall percentage of large cap funds that I hold and dividing that by the entire portfolio value, and that gets me my percentages. I repeated that for mid cap growth, and I've also repeated it for small cap growth. To go even further, I've divided up value, growth, and blend, so I can tell what percentages are changing there if I were to hypothetically make these changes or trades. And I've also broken down mutual funds and ETFs, which I hold some stocks and mutual funds, and I hold some ETFs. I've got some monthly calculations here. That month is not a very good example, but in December, I've got some monthly calculations of how much cash I hold, how much I have in my portfolio, add that together for the overall net worth. I've got the percentage of cash, which is 42.5, versus my overall portfolio, which is 57.5. So I can tell how much cash versus investment I have. And I've got a little math check in there. End of year projections for how much I should have by the end of 2014 and 2015. Very high hopes there, I know. Some prospect funds that I've found while doing some research that might potentially be winners. Some losers that I might have identified in my own portfolio, and then again, here's the sell and buy funds that I'm hoping to sell and buy by the end of the year to eliminate some expense, increase my growth, and do all these things that I said. I think you'll be astonished and think it's really cool how this actually works out. So keep an eye on these allocation numbers here as I make some changes. I've got my average expense ratio now today at 0.7713. I got that up there. I've added up, if I were to sell Dodge into FuseX, I would have a total of 56.91. If I were to sell FLPSX into PEG-ZX, I would have 69. So I've done the math as if I were to merge or consolidate these funds. Now I'm going to actually change the numbers in the spreadsheet to show you the differences and show you how much money I can actually potentially save by making this trade. So I'm going to sell Dodge and Cox, zero that out. I'm going to sell Fidelity, buy T. Rowe Price. I'm going to sell CGMFX, buy AFJDX. Oh, and I'll explain to you why I'm going to sell these in a minute. And sell Jordex and buy buy into JWWX. As you can see, this fund has a high expense ratio as well as this one, and they're not very highly rated of Morningstar, so I'm going to sell this and buy into a higher rated fund with a lower expense ratio. I'm going to sell this fund into, well, it's got a higher expense ratio, but it's going to work out to my benefit in the long run. You'll see. Same philosophy for here. So now I have actually zeroed out that fund and made the change. You can see that my growth allocation has actually increased. I'm going to work backward real quick to see how it's changed. If you'll notice my large, mid, and small, they really don't change much. I'm not moving that allocation much, but I am moving some of my blend and value into the growth area. So I'm going to make the trade again, watch the numbers zero out with the allocation. I've sold Dodge and Cox into FuseX. Now I've sold Fidelity into T. Rowe Price. And I've sold the other two. Now I'm in a 34% growth rate. Okay, that's all fine and dandy, but I want to figure out how much money I actually save in expenses. So I'm going to quickly zero that out to get my new expense ratio and compare that to the old one. Before I do that, I've captured the amount of money that all of these funds composed. So Dodgex, all of these, this that I've traded, has total $11,827.53. So that's important to know. I'm going to zero out my expense ratios because those are now changing, and I will get a new expense ratio average, which is 0.514. Quickly add that there. Whoops. I want to know the difference or change in my expense ratios so I can determine or multiply that by the amount of money that I would have lost, or come up with the amount of money that I would have lost. So the change here is that expense minus that expense ratio. So there's a difference of 0.257. So if I multiply the amount of money that I had in those funds by the difference that I'm missing out on, you will see a grand total of $3,043 that I can save by changing these four funds right there. Seems like a good idea to me. Oh, and not only that, you'll notice that now I only have one fund at risk of being under that 5% threshold. It's funny how that works out, but pretty neat at the same time. Let me know if you think this is a good option.